Good afternoon, everybody. Please be seated. Routine proceedings, introduction of bills. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I move, seconded by the First Minister, that Bill number 45, the Budget Implementation and Tax Statutes Amendment Act 2022, Loi d'exécution de budget de 2022 et modifiant diverses dispositions législatives en matière de fiscalité, be now read a first time.
Hear, hear.
It has been moved by the Honourable Minister of Finance, seconded by the Honourable First Minister, that Bill number 45, the Budget Implementation and Tax Statutes Amendment Act 2022, be now read a first time. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to introduce Bill 45, the Budget Implementation and Tax Statutes Amendment Act for 2022. The bill implements numerous tax statutes and other administrative changes, most of which were announced as part of Budget 2022, as well as some additional priority legislation. These measures lower taxes for Manitobans and for businesses, provide one-time assistance to families with minor children and low-income seniors dealing with inflationary pressures. They provide certainty for residential and agricultural property owners respecting their 50% school tax rebate in 2023 and enhance Manitoba government's service delivery, Madam Speaker.
Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed? Agreed and so ordered. The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move, secondly by the Indigenous Reconciliation and Northern Relations member, that Bill number 46, the Highway Traffic Amendment Act, be now read for the first time.
It has been moved by the Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure, seconded by the Honourable Minister of Indigenous Reconciliation and Northern Relations, that Bill number 46, the Highway Traffic Amendment Act, be now read a first time. The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to introduce Bill 46, the Highway Traffic Amendment Act. This bill amends the Highway Traffic Act to create a new offence for travelling on the highway that is closed due to bad weather conditions, flooding, or construction. This bill will make Manitoba's roads safer by addressing concerns raised by the RCMP about motorists ignoring highway closures, as this is a dangerous behaviour that puts lives at risk. The new offence and the associated penalties will make it clear that driving on the closed highway is not permitted in Manitoba. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed? Agreed and so ordered. Committee reports, tabling of reports. The Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'm pleased to table the revised estimates in the committee for the Committee of Supply.
Ministerial statements. The Honourable Minister of Health, and I would indicate that the required 90 minutes notice prior to routine proceedings was provided in accordance with our Rule 26, Bracket 2. Would the Honourable Minister please proceed with her statement?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. October 11th is International Day of the Girl. Across the world, we use this as an opportunity to highlight the role girls play as powerful voices for change in their families, their communities, and their nations. International Day of the Girl is celebrating its 10th anniversary, having been declared in 2012 at the United Nations. Plan International Canada worked in partnership with the Canadian government on a 2-year campaign to lead the work on having this day recognized globally. I encourage you to reflect on the many challenges that girls have faced due to their gender just over the past decade alone. And also think about the amazing young women and girls who've achieved great things and will continue to do so. The burdens that girls are facing are huge. These include inconsistent access to education, nutrition, legal rights, and medical care. Many struggle to find protection from discrimination, violence, and forced marriage. Madam Speaker, regardless of these challenges, girls are making an impact around the world and creating immense positive change in their communities. At the time the United Nations declared International Day of the Girl in 2012, we were in the immediate aftermath of Malala Yousafzai being shot by a Taliban gunman in an assassination attempt in retaliation for her activism. Think about the great things she has accomplished since that time. This is just one example of a girl with the determination to lead the way as an activist, and proves that one is never too young to shape the future and empower others. We do not need to go very far to find our own remarkable examples of young trailblazers right here in Manitoba. One of these won our Empower Women Award in the youth category last year. Divya Sharma is a determined, driven young woman with a passion for giving back to her community. She's a strong voice and leader in her high school and is the youngest member of the Asian Women of Winnipeg Board. After seeing the challenges that frontline workers faced during the COVID-19 pandemic, Divya collaborated with various organizations across the country and helped to provide over 16,000 care packages to healthcare workers, first responders, and essential services workers. We were so proud to be able to recognize Divya Sharma last year, and I cannot wait to see who receives our youth and adult category of the Empower Awards this year. I know that we received multiple nominations, and I commend those who submitted the nominations to ensure that the efforts of these outstanding young women are recognized. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Notre Dame.
October 11th is International Day of the Girl, a day when we celebrate girls and commit to ending the systemic barriers that prevent them from having equal opportunity. One of the issues that girls across the world face is gender-based violence, and we know that this happens in Manitoba too. For girls, it is often experienced in schools or online through social media. Girls as young as 15 have reached out to me about bullying and sexual harassment and even sexual assault that they have experienced. A 2019 survey done by the CBC found that sexual violence between students in schools was highest in the prairies. More must be done, including teaching young people media literacy and age-appropriate content regarding consent. Noni Klassen, Director of Education for the Canadian Centre for Child Protection, has noted that schools have a unique role as they have both the responsibility to create safe environments and an opportunity to have these conversations which students may not be having anywhere else. As we celebrate International Day of the Girl, I would like to highlight two students who I have had the pleasure of working with on the issue of gender-based violence in schools. Christine Blanco, Elsa Watt, and her mom, Jennifer Watt, have been researching gender-based violence in schools across the province and discovering how prevalent the experience of violence is for girls in Manitoba. As legislators, we owe it to these students and to all girls in Manitoba to tackle the issue of gender-based violence by listening when they ask for what they need and working together to prioritize the policies and programs with the greatest impact on Manitoba girls. Every girl deserves to feel safe in school and to have the opportunity to reach her full potential. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park.
Madam Speaker, I ask for leave to respond to the Minister's statement.
Does the member have leave to respond to the ministerial statement? Leave has been granted. The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to recognize the 10th anniversary of International Day of the Girl. This year's theme is Our Time is Now, Our Rights, Our Future. Madam Speaker, while there are many topics we can discuss, I want to raise attention to the ongoing need for continued and more supports towards the opportunities of girls and women here in Manitoba. We are very aware of the glass ceilings that are still in many traditional male-dominant sports and professions that are preventing girls and women from making contributions to these fields. This causes me to reflect upon STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, who intentionally focus on underrepresented groups. We need more groups like this for all ages. We're also aware of other barriers that are making it difficult and often impossible for girls and women to pursue education and employment opportunities. At a provincial level, we could be doing more through affordable and accessible education, health benefits, whether you're a student, a child, or a parent. We could also be doing much more to ensure girls and women are not having to delay or withdraw from their own education and career choices due to not having access or funding for childcare. Madam Speaker, girls in today's society face tremendous barriers on top of the many expectations they often feel internally. We must continue to challenge the norms and beliefs that prevent girls and women from having the same opportunities as anyone else, and that is why we take time today to recognize the 10th anniversary of International Day of the Girl. Thank you.
Member statements. The Honourable Member for Seine River.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. October 11th is National Food Truck Day. This day started in 2015 to celebrate the variety of food trucks that are in operation all over North America and the hardworking people behind them. The food truck model makes it convenient and accessible to try new food or old favorites. Although their operation has been limited in the last couple of years due to COVID-19, food truck rallies and festivals offer great opportunities for communities and individuals to try new gourmet and ethnically diverse foods from all over North America. Winnipeg is home to a variety of food trucks that can be found all around the city. During the summer, Broadway is filled with many food trucks and vendors. Additionally, St. Norbert Farmers Market is home to food trucks like the Red Ember and vendors who sell their favorite cuisine to the many patrons at the market. Imagine a local fair and community event without the famous mini donuts or lemonade trucks. There are options for everyone, from fries and poutine to falafel, tacos, ice cream, and more. These trucks make it easy to find something that appeals to anyone. The Tourism Winnipeg website provides a map of the food trucks in the city for those interested, or you can find them by wandering around the city until you see or smell something you like. The food truck industry can be said to be representative of Canada and of Manitoba as a whole. Food trucks allow hardworking individuals to start their own businesses and be their own bosses while sharing aspects of their culture with their communities through their food. This multicultural, hardworking industry absolutely deserves the recognition that National Food Truck Day provides. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Union Station.
Community safety is a growing issue in Union Station in many Manitoba communities. I regularly hear from folks who are concerned about community members navigating poverty, struggling with homelessness, addictions, and unmet basic needs. People recognize that a lack of deeply affordable housing, access to mental health and addiction services like safer consumption sites, and a lack of meaningful and safe connections are contributing to the rise in safety issues. I've yet to encounter anyone who doesn't think we need to approach these issues with compassion, harm reduction, and anti-racist and decolonial lens to ensure we're providing care and resources which meet people where they're at. People have a right to be safe in their communities and know that their government prioritizes their well-being no matter where they live in Manitoba. Fortunately, good people are filling the gaps in services which have been cut and underfunded by this PC government. Spence Neighborhood Association has a new initiative called Community Connecting Nights. Starting in November, they'll be hosting community safety meetings the first Tuesday of each month at the Merck on Lang site. Additionally, Thrive Community Support Circle recently developed a group which has started safety patrols that aim to create positive visibility and foster safety in the neighborhood. I had the pleasure of meeting with Thrive's Safety Patrol Club recently. They're wonderful people who care deeply for others, and they're looking for more members to join their walks. I encourage you to reach out if you're interested in joining or supporting their initiative, and you can even get one of their great t-shirts, which I'm proudly wearing today. I'm honored to recognize the efforts of grassroots organizations and neighbors who are doing what they can to make a positive difference. I call on this government to take lessons from these folks and start doing their part to foster well and safer communities. Today, we're joined by members of Spence Neighborhood Association and Thrive's Safety Patrol Club. I ask my colleagues to join me in welcoming and thanking them for their very important work. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Fort White.
Good afternoon, Madam Speaker. Today I rise with sadness and sorrow, but also with a sense of hope and renewed optimism. Sadness and sorrow that 1,007 days ago, 176 innocent lives were taken from this world on flight PS-752 when it was shot down by 2 missiles from the Islamic Revolution Guard Corps, or more commonly known as the IRGC. 176 lives, in which 138 of them had direct ties to Canada and 55 of them were Canadian citizens. But the sadness and sorrow doesn't stop there. 107,000 days later, more injustice and unspeakable atrocities are still happening in Iran by the IRGC, and the world remains mostly silent. On September 16th, 2022, Mahsa Amini, a 22-year-old female, was murdered for not covering her head as the IRGC morality police deemed it inappropriate. And since then, 194 innocent lives, including 19 children, have been killed in the protest to demand for justice for Mahsa Amini. While people are being killed for the right to choose what they wear, right here in our own backyard, people in Quebec are being fired and discriminated against for choosing to wear the same clothing right here in Canada. Yet with all this sadness and sorrow, there is a renewed sense of hope and optimism, a renewed fight for justice for the people of Iran. On October 1st, I was honored to take part in a tree planting in my riding of Fort White at Scurfield Park, organized by the Iranian community in Manitoba, in which they planted 176 trees for the precious souls taken on flight PS-752. The trees are merely the first phase of a beautiful memorial that will be completed in the next coming year. I invite all of you to come join me and the Iranian community for a cup of tea under these new trees. The call for justice and action in the world is growing louder and louder by the day, and justice will prevail for the people of Iran. This is the hope and optimism I feel, and I am proud to stand in solidarity with the Iranian community and justice everywhere. I would now ask my colleagues to rise today and recognize those from the Iranian community that are fighting for justice and are joined us here today.
The Honourable Member for Burrows.
Shukriya, Madam Speaker. I rise today to raise the concerns of my constituents about their access to Punjabi language education. Manitobans of Punjabi origin constitute a significant portion of provincial population. There are over 33,000 people in Manitoba whose native language is Punjabi, and over 27,000 others who speak mostly Punjabi at home. In fact, Punjabi is the 4th most widely spoken language in Canada. Punjabi Canadians have contributed in no small measure to the socio-economic development of Canada and Manitoba in significant fields such as education, science, health, business, and politics. Additionally, thousands of Punjabi international students contribute millions of dollars to our economy. Thousands of Punjabi immigrants arrive and settle in Manitoba on a regular basis. During their struggle to settle as new Canadians, they make numerous sacrifices, which include having to witness their children disconnect from their cultural roots. A lot of Punjabi parents have to send their children to religious institutions, cultural academies, private tutors, and family friends to learn Punjabi language and other cultural values. This takes extra effort and resources, which is not affordable for all Punjabi immigrants. Therefore, families with both young children and adult members feel a strong need for Punjabi language education at Manitoban institutions of learning. For years, there have been Ukrainian, Ojibwe, Filipino, Cree, Hebrew, and Spanish bilingual programs running in different school divisions in our province. A similar Punjabi bilingual program can be offered in Manitoban schools. A Punjabi bilingual program will not only provide education on the language, but also expose students to Punjabi culture and traditions. Furthermore, this will be helpful in preparing multilingual professionals who have higher cultural tolerance for diverse ways of life. It will also better prepare students to manage cross-cultural situations and relationships. I would like to thank the hundreds of constituents who have signed a petition calling on the government to take steps to start teaching Punjabi language at all levels of education in Manitoba. I also acknowledge members of the Punjabi community, Harjeet Kaur Sandhu, Ravinder Gill, Deepak Kochet, Harinder Paul Sharma, Saroj Bala, Pramod Chandra, and Veena Kumari Vasudeva, who have joined us today. Shukriya, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for River Heights.
Madam Speaker, neurodiversity is present in a variety of individuals, including those with learning disabilities, autism, and ADHD. Understanding of and support for them is a very important issue in Manitoba today. I will explain why. Individuals who are neurodiverse tend to be very creative and often have new ways of looking at things and solving problems. When they're better understood and better supported, they can be major contributors to our society and to social, environmental, and economic progress. When individuals who are neurodiverse are not supported adequately, they struggle, often drop out of school, can sometimes be involved with CFS, and can develop secondary mental illnesses like anxiety and depression. They can also sometimes develop addictions, experience homelessness, become juvenile delinquents, and be victims of or commit crimes. A recent survey showed that homelessness and crime are the top two issues in Winnipeg today. To address these issues, we must better understand and support those who are neurodiverse. Not only will better understanding and support for them help reduce homelessness and crime, it will also enable them to achieve their potential and contribute to Manitoba in very positive ways. How do we better help those who are neurodiverse? An important step is to recognize that those who are neurodiverse and have an IQ greater than 75 continue to need supports after they turn 18 years of age. Newfoundland has already made support for individuals with autism after age 18 based on their need, not simply on their age. Manitoba needs to make this change to help neurodiverse individuals transition from youth to adulthood in a successful way. Thank you.
Oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Madam Speaker, the Grace Hospital is in crisis. 13 nurses have quit the intensive care unit there since the summer because the situation is so bad. That's according to frontline workers. Nurses are overworked. Their message is simple: things are not okay. The PC cuts are making things worse. The PCs cut 9 beds from the Grace Hospital. That's according to the annual report of the WRHA, which I will table for the benefit of the Cabinet and the Premier. These are the facts. The cuts are making things worse and driving nurses out of the front lines. Why is the Premier cutting health care at the Grace Hospital?
The Honourable First Minister.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And again, the Leader of the Opposition continues to put false information on the record within this chamber. He knows full well that we're investing over $1 billion more than the previous NDP government ever did in health care alone, Madam Speaker. Now, we recognize that there are health, or that there are human resource issues within the healthcare system. But that is nothing, of course, Madam Speaker, that is unique to Manitoba. Been working with my counterparts across the country and indeed the federal government in looking at this very serious issue. And that's why we continue to call on the federal government for the Canada Health Transfer, Madam Speaker. We will continue to work with my counterparts across the country to ensure that we have the human resources there to run our healthcare system.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a supplementary question.
Madam Speaker, the #1 health human resource challenge we have in this problem is that we've got a PC government that is driving nurses out of the healthcare system. At the Grace Intensive Care Unit, that's just one site. Since this summer, 13 nurses have left our healthcare system. That's coming at the time we can least afford to lose any more nurses. Everyone knows that this is a result of PC mismanagement. They closed the emergency rooms, they closed the beds, they fired the nurses, and now it's the remaining healthcare staff who are left to pick up the pieces. When will the PCs stop cutting healthcare in Manitoba?
The Honourable First Minister.
Once again, Madam Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition's preamble and his question, there's a litany of false accusations there, Madam Speaker, but we will continue to put the facts on the record, Madam Speaker. And the fact of the matter is that we have a plan moving forward when it comes to increasing nursing positions in the province of Manitoba. We made that announcement some time ago. We are working towards that goal of 400 more seats in the province of Manitoba to train those nurses. We recognize, Madam Speaker, again, this is not something that's unique to Manitoba. It's something that we're facing right across this country. But I can tell you, Madam Speaker, while we have a plan, the NDP has no plan.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a final supplementary.
Madam Speaker, this government can't even plan an annual general meeting for PC members. I don't know if that's because of incompetence on the part of the PCs or whether the leadership is just afraid to face their grassroots members. But I'll tell you what, on this side of the House, we think it's a mistake to cut 13 ICU nurses from the Grace Hospital. We say it's a mistake to cut 9 beds from the same Grace Hospital. This is a time where we need every single available person working on the front lines of our healthcare system. We can't afford to lose any more. When will the PCs agree and stop cutting healthcare in Manitoba?
The Honourable First Minister.
Well, Madam Speaker, I can detect that the Leader of the Opposition is sensitive to the fact that he has no plan or vision for the future of our province.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is we do have a plan, Madam Speaker. We recognize that there's a challenge with respect to human resources and including nurses, Madam Speaker, when it comes to our healthcare system. Again, nothing unique to Manitoba. It's something that every province is facing across the country, and that's why we have a short, medium, and long-term plan for increasing those positions, Madam Speaker. We will continue to work in that direction with a plan that is putting more seats into our healthcare system, Madam Speaker. The Leader of the Opposition has offered nothing when it comes to a plan for human resource challenges in the healthcare system, Madam Speaker. Shame on him.
Right.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a new question.
You know, Madam Speaker, we learned that the Minister of Infrastructure vetoed the government department in order to help a PC donor with a project in Brandon. This project will cost everyone in Brandon, or at least contribute to the rising costs, to the extent of hundreds of dollars per year for folks living in Brandon, Manitoba. The minister's own department said that this project, and I quote, increased the risk of accidents, and it was in direct violation of the law. And yet this minister pushed it through anyways at the behest of this premier. Why is the premier pushing through a project that is going to cost the people of Brandon hundreds of dollars per year?
The Honourable First Minister.
Well, Madam Speaker, we will always put the safety and the environment and economic development ahead of anything. The Leader of the Opposition, again, has no plan or vision for the future. But when it comes to transportation, I can understand why you would be a little sensitive, Madam Speaker, because the fact of the matter is the NDP government, while they had 17 years to fix the infrastructure in this province, left us with a significant investment, Madam, with a significant deficit. With a significant deficit, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, we will continue to clean up the mess of the 17 years of an NDP government. We don't want to go back to that.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a supplementary question.
Madam Speaker, the Premier and her minister have created a mess here. Again, the department said specifically that the developer of this project, and I'm quoting here, failed to address the department's concerns. They said that they did not prepare a study by a qualified engineer. And finally, they said that this project does not meet, quote, standards, nor does it conform to established policy. End quote, Madam Speaker. These are the government's own conclusions. The only reason that the project ended up getting approved by the same government is because this minister vetoed the government's decision, overruling the professional civil service in the name of a PC donor. Why did the Premier overrule her own department to help a PC fundraising contributor? Yeah.
The Honourable First Minister.
Well, Madam Speaker, I can see why the Leader of the Opposition is hesitant to put facts on the record when it comes to infrastructure, Madam Speaker, because the facts of the matter are they left our government with a significant infrastructure deficit right across the province of Manitoba.
Absolutely.
That's why in the last, we announced in Budget 2022 a commitment of $2.5 billion over the next 3 years. That's $500 million a year, Madam Speaker, that will go towards cleaning up the mess of the previous NDP government.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a final supplementary.
Madam Speaker, here are the facts about this project in Brandon. The government says it will increase accidents. It says it is against department policy and that it violates the Water Rights Act. Now, instead of listening to the professional public service, the minister overruled. He vetoed their decision, all in the name of a PC donor who contributed the maximum allowable to the PC's leadership campaign, Madam Speaker. Wow. This looks like political interference, and what's more, it looks like it's going to cost the people of Brandon hundreds of dollars a year on their water bills. So the question remains for the First Minister, why did she veto a civil service decision to benefit a PC donor?
The Honourable First Minister.
Well, Madam Speaker, again, we have a plan for the future of infrastructure projects in the province of Manitoba where the NDP has no plan and no vision for the future of our province, Madam Speaker. Things like twinning the Trans-Canada Highway to the Ontario border, the Highway 75 refurbishment, St. Mary's Overpass, the Winnipeg 1 million perimeter highway freeway initiative, and the list goes on and on and on, Madam Speaker. We have a plan for the future of our province. Where's the NDP's plan?
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. According to the Minister of Infrastructure's own department, a Brandon developer is pushing forward a project that, quote, increases the risk of accidents, including a higher potential for more severe accidents. This project is, according to the department, a, quote, direct violation of the Water Rights Act. So the department rejected this proposal twice. That is until the minister stepped in and personally intervened and approved it anyway. And that will mean drastically higher water bills for the people living in Brandon. Why is the minister personally pushing forward projects that mean more accidents and higher water bills?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to thank the member for the question. Madam Speaker, when it comes to the city of Brandon, the bypass that goes around the city of Brandon is much like the perimeter highway, Madam Speaker. And when it comes to the actual city of Winnipeg, the actual Portage Avenue, Pembina Highway, Henderson Highway, Main Street, all go right up to the perimeter highway for economic development, Madam Speaker. This is the focus that we're looking at Brandon. Brandon is a growing community, and we want to make sure that economic development happens in the city of Brandon, and that we're allowing the access for this development to happen, so there can be economic growth and opportunities for the city of Brandon. And everything is actually north of the bypass, given the opportunity for making sure number one safety is the safety concerns for all Brandonites.
Yep. The Honourable Member for Concordia on a supplementary question.
But the minister's own department thought this project should be rejected. In fact, it was already previously rejected by the Highway Traffic Board. The PCs, they're not interested in the facts. They're willing to push it through anyway. The project will mean more accidents, it violates the law, and it will mean higher water bills for those living in Brandon. That's what the government's own internal documents say. So why is the Premier willing to stand behind this minister and continue to push higher water rates and unsafe conditions on the people of Brandon?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Madam Speaker, our priority, number one priority is safety when it comes to Manitoba drivers, Madam Speaker. And when it comes to the city of Brandon, in this situation here, Madam Speaker, we're going to be reviewing the plan that the developer is going to look at. We're also going to create a plan for our Highway 10 when it comes to the safety, making sure that we reduce speed zones, much like these did in the city of Winnipeg, when Portage Avenue. If this member across the aisle would like to, if it was in the past, he would not even want Unicity to grow. This is the opportunity for Brandon to grow up to when it comes to the bypass, Madam Speaker. And we're going to allow Brandon to continue growing for economically, making sure that we also look at the safety of going around the city of Brandon.
The Honourable Member for Concordia on a final supplementary.
Madam Speaker, these are direct quotes from the department. This project will, quote, increase collisions, quote, end quote. It does not, quote, meet standards or conform to established policy, end quote. And it's in direct violation of the Water Rights Act. These are just a few of the reasons that the government's own department rejected it twice. But this PC government and this minister are willing to push it through anyway. The PCs have tried to hide their interference, all to help one of their friends who's donated thousands of dollars to the PC party. That's just wrong, Madam Speaker. Why is the minister pushing projects that mean more accidents and higher water bills for the people of Brandon?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Madam Speaker, the other member across the aisle, he has been in the government for 17 years with the NDP government, Madam Speaker. They didn't want development happening anywhere in this province. They put so much red tape, Madam Speaker. Here's an opportunity now to make sure this province grows every corner of this province right now, and we're going to do that, Madam Speaker. We're going to make sure we focus on economic development at the same time focusing on safety for all Manitoba drivers, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Union Station.
Madam Speaker, Lions Place at 610 Portage Avenue is the largest nonprofit seniors building in our province. It's important that social housing be preserved. Seniors are rightly concerned that the building will be sold to an operator that's going to charge them market rent. When this issue emerged a few years ago, the government said they were working on a solution, but the financial agreements expired. Where's the government's concern today? Will they take action and ensure Lions Place is not sold?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Union Station for the question. Once again, Madam Speaker, members opposite are late with their communication. They missed a meeting, Madam Speaker. Manitoba Housing, I want them to know, is committed to working with nonprofit and other housing providers to ensure the efficient delivery of affordable housing for all Manitobans, including Lions Place. That is why the Minister of Families met with the group representing Lions Place, the voice for that group, on October 3rd. We will continue to meet to move on issues that are important to the individuals at Lions Place, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Union Station on a supplementary question.
Madam Speaker, Lions Place has operated for decades for the benefit of seniors. A sale threatens the long-term affordability for seniors. Many of them have lived there for years, Madam Speaker. Hundreds of social housing units have already been lost under this PC government. We should not lose, and we cannot afford to lose any more. Seniors at Lions should continue to have affordable rent. Will the minister take action today and ensure that Lions Place is not sold?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Again, the Minister of Families has met with representatives from Lions Place and discussions are underway. But I want Manitobans to know that it was our government that endorsed the bilateral agreement under the National Housing Strategy in 2019. And we're also encouraged by the federal government's commitment to support nonprofit housing providers. Madam Speaker, since 2016, 755 new social and affordable housing units have been developed, as well as 320 new shelter beds. Madam Speaker, we are taking action on housing, and we will continue to do so even at Lions Place.
Yes.
The honourable member for Union Station on a final supplementary.
Madam Speaker, this minister knows that a meeting is not a commitment or a guarantee to those seniors. I wrote the minister about this matter, and unfortunately, the minister's response included no commitment to renew or new funding to help Lions be viable today and into the future. The Action Committee at Lions Place is also looking for leadership from the minister to help seniors' rent remain affordable. We're talking about hundreds of seniors, Madam Speaker. This is the largest nonprofit seniors building in the province. It needs to be preserved. Will the minister take action and ensure 610 Portage Avenue remains with the Lions for now and for well into the future?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Meetings are where our government listens and develops a plan. And I encourage the NDP opposite to take a page out of our book, listen and develop a plan. So we are listening to representatives at Lions Place to develop a plan, Madam Speaker, because our government knows that the nonprofit housing sector plays a key role in affordable housing. Lions Place is one of those housing facilities, and we want to ensure the residents there continue to receive the housing that they need today and in the future.
The honourable member for St. John's.
Speaker, well, we're seeing the impact of the Premier's plan to privatize medical aviation services. Just last week, Madam Speaker, a mother and her little newborn from a northern community had to wait over 24 hours to be medevaced to Winnipeg after her infant experienced seizures. We can well imagine how scared and worried the mom must have been. Critical services like medical aviation should not be sold off to the highest bidder. The Premier should be ensuring medical aviation services are publicly owned. Will she do so today?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members opposite know that due to patient privacy laws, I cannot speak to specific cases on the floor of this chamber. I would like to remind members opposite that it's medical practitioners, medical professionals that are making the decisions at the bedside, Madam Speaker. And I do want to speak to what the member has raised, to share that Shared Health Child Transport Team, and it specializes in the care of transport for infants and children. We're in regular contact with the families, Madam Speaker, and we will continue to do our part to ensure that individuals in the North have access to care.
The honourable member for St. John's on a supplementary question.
We know that the Premier has a financial interest in Exchange Income Corporation, a company looking to bid on medical aviation services. Earlier this year, the province issued an RFP for medical aviation services, Madam Speaker. The submission deadline ended in September. Manitobans deserve to know who this essential medical service will be sold off to, Madam Speaker. Will EIC get the medical aviation services contract? Simple, yes or no, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a pleasure for me to rise in this chamber to put facts on the record, Madam Speaker, something the members opposite have not done. Our government is committed to enhancing critical care capacity in Manitoba, and more modern medical aviation fleet is a vital component of that service. And so an RFP was issued, Madam Speaker. It will ensure safe, timely, reliable, and consistent care, standardized universal care among air ambulances, help to build a more modern critical care service that supports the evolving needs of Manitobans. And I'm pleased to see that the member for St. John's is interested in knowing about the RFP, because it will provide excellent aviation
The member's time
for
has expired.
Manitobans.
The honourable member for St. John's on a final supplementary.
A mother and her little newborn had to wait 24 hours to be medevaced out from their community to Winnipeg last week, Madam Speaker. That shows how important timely medical aviation services are. The quality of these services are suffering because of the PC's privatization plans. And the Premier has a financial interest in EIC, a private company bidding on medical aviation services. The government's RFP for medical aviation closes. It closed in September. Can the Premier tell us whether or not EIC will get this contract and whether or not she recused herself from this deal? Miigwech.
Yeah, good question.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Side.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The RFP process is an independent process, independent of government. The decisions are not being made here in the legislative building, Madam Speaker. Something that I understand is new for the members opposite. Madam Speaker, the RFP again will ensure safe, timely, reliable, and consistent care, standardized universal care among air ambulances, help to build a more modern critical care service, and more. It is a public process. It's independent of our government. We look forward to the results of that.
Hear, hear. Great job. Better value, high.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Earlier this session, my colleagues raised concerns about the accelerating use of private nurse agencies. This situation is even worse in the north, and I'll table Freedom of Information response. $5 million was spent in just the first 6 months of 2022. The north is now on pace to spend $10 million a year on agency nurses. This is more than 4 times what it was just a few years ago. What is the minister doing to address the growing reliance on private agencies?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a pleasure to rise in the House today to talk about exactly what our government is doing. $19.5 million to add 259 nurse training seats this year, Madam Speaker. Wow. On track to meet our goal of 400 new nursing seats. $4.3 million for 37 additional nurse training seats at University College of the North. I was pleased to be part of the graduation ceremony for the College of Nursing last year, where we welcomed over 100 new nurses to the health system, Madam Speaker. 149 nurses are taking additional training within the system, and I have more to share with the members opposite.
The honourable member for Flin Flon on a supplementary question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We know that this government, when they first got elected, cut nurse training seats. Now trying to play catch-up is going to leave us short. Madam Speaker, $5 million in the Northern Health Region on private agencies in just 6 months. The use of private agencies is accelerating. It's getting worse. Northern Region all across the north. Meanwhile, Thompson now is running 26% nurse vacancy rate. Same time, they've shut hospitals down throughout the north because they don't have nurses. They don't want to hire enough agencies now because they've created this nightmare themselves. So will the minister reverse her cuts today, not someday during the future?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's my pleasure to rise in the House to put on the record their cuts and their closures, Madam Speaker. When the NDP were in power, they closed 16 emergency departments across rural Manitoba. These changes affected over 100 communities, Madam Speaker. In fact, there were rural EDs that had been temporarily closed for 15 years, Madam Speaker, under their watch due to the staffing issues. That is the legacy of their government that we are now having to clean up, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Flin Flon on a final supplementary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, Lynn Lake used to have a hospital. Leaf Rapids used to have a hospital. Snow Lake used to have a hospital until this government's cuts caught up with them. They're trying to contract out all the health care in the north, and that's what they're doing. The approach is undermining the public system. Nurses in the public system are being mandated while private agencies are provided more money, more flexibility. This is eroding the public system. The Northern Health Region on track to spend $10 million on private agency nurses this year. So what is the minister doing to attract full-time nurses to the public system going forward rather than discouraging them?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm pleased to rise to put some information on the record about what we are doing in the north and rural communities. In Budget 2022, our government has committed $812 million, Madam Speaker, the largest single healthcare commitment in Manitoba's history to improve rural and northern care. It will lead to over 30 projects that will also include a northern intermediary hub to ensure individuals receive care closer to home, Madam Speaker. We will continue to take action when they did.
Order. The honourable member for St. Boniface.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'm very pleased this morning Bill 225 to reform the abuse of non-disclosure agreements passed second reading and will go to committee. Unions exist to protect workers, and we want to make sure that that's happening. That's why it was disturbing to hear a while ago that the former head of the Winnipeg Labour Council, Basia Sokol, had to resign because complaints were being ignored, and she's still being hounded. She filed a complaint of sexual harassment and sexual assault, and when her union dismissed the charges and she expressed her disappointment online, she was sued by defamation by her alleged assailant. The case just wrapped up in August. Will the Premier support our NDA reform bill to prevent survivors from being silenced and go further, encourage people to speak up?
The Honourable Minister of Labour, Consumer Protection and Government Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, as I understand it, the House sat this morning and debated the legislation, and I understand it's moved to committee.
The Honourable Member for St. Boniface on a supplementary question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm pleased to say that Ms. Sokol prevailed in her two cases, including she won her case and won at the Court of Appeal just in August, and I tabled a judgment. This is what she was sued for saying, without naming anyone. Quote, "Just this week, I was once again reminded of how little faith workers must have in their representation when my own union dismissed sexual harassment and assault charges against another member following an 18-month investigation against a member who was and continues to be very active in the union. I was the only one who came forward formally, but I can certainly imagine that following testimony of several other women at the hearings, I will be the last. That is difficult to read, Madam Speaker. Now, we know there is more to do to prevent cases like this, but will the Premier and the PC support our bill that will, as a start, end the abuse of NDAs in Manitoba?
The Honourable Minister of Labour, Consumer Protection and Government Services.
Madam Speaker, well, as the member opposite well knows, we don't discuss or are able to discuss individual cases in the legislature here. It's his prerogative to bring them up if he wishes. The particular legislation that I believe had some reference to moved to committee, and we look forward to hearing from Manitobans on that issue.
The Honourable Member for River Heights on a final supplementary.
Madam Speaker, currently adults who are neurodiverse, who have, as example, a learning disability, autism or ADHD, are being denied access by this government to community living and disability services if their IQ is above 75. Newfoundland and Labrador have now recognized that access to services should be based on the nature of the disability and on a person's needs rather than on IQ. When will the provincial government make the changes needed so that neurodiverse adults with an IQ above 75 can access CLDS services on the basis of their needs rather than on the basis of their IQ?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member from River Heights for the question. We have significantly increased the budget for CLDS. In Budget 2022, we will continue to do our part to ensure that children and families across this province have the care and access to care that they need. And I want to point out an example, $4 million to ensure that 270 vulnerable youth exiting care continue to receive benefits and supports. That's just one example, Madam Speaker. We will do so much more here in this province.
The Honourable Member for Swan River.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. Our government has signed many Memorandum of Understandings with Indigenous communities related to forestry operations on their traditional territory. Can the Minister of Natural Resources and Northern Development explain why this is a significant step forward towards Indigenous economic reconciliation?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources and Northern Development.
Well, I'd like to thank the member from Swan River for that very timely question. Madam Speaker, we recognize that Indigenous communities should benefit from forestry operations on their traditional territories. That is why our government is proud to have signed these historic Memorandums of Understanding with 5 First Nations, which are first of their kind in Manitoba. We are looking forward to engaging with more Indigenous leaders on our First Nations to ensure everyone benefits from Manitoba's resources. These communities will now see 45% of revenues collected from timber dues returned to their rights holders. The timber dues collected through the management of Manitoba's forest are just one of many economic benefits that are a part of our government's ongoing commitment to enhancing Indigenous participation in the forestry sector.
Yeah. Well done.
Honourable Member for Kuwait-Nook.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to segue into my concern. Earlier this year, the Auditor General determined that the PC government failed to live up to their legal responsibility to implement a reconciliation strategy. The Auditor General found that the PCs have no strategy for reconciliation and no plan for when they will implement one. 6 months after this report was released, we still haven't heard anything on when we might see a reconciliation strategy implemented. Can the Minister tell us when he will put forward a reconciliation strategy here in Manitoba?
The Honourable Minister of Indigenous Reconciliation and Northern Relations.
Well, yes, we accept the Auditor General's report on the
Department of Indigenous Reconciliation and Northern Relations, and with respect to advancing the reconciliation strategy. Our government is committed to advancing the reconciliation strategy through meaningful engagement with all Manitobans and informed by Indigenous peoples. And we have developed an engagement plan which will serve as the basis for this work, which is expected to begin shortly.
Yep. The Honourable Member for Kuwait-Nook on a supplementary question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You used the word shortly, but it's been 6 years since the Path to Reconciliation Act was passed. Yet despite the act requiring the PCs to implement a reconciliation strategy, nothing has been put forward. In fact, the Auditor General found that the PCs have no strategy and no plan for when one will be implemented. The Auditor General said, and I quote, "Without a strategy, efforts toward reconciliation are hampered, ultimately lacking focus and vision," end quote. The PC government should commit to implementing a strategy today. Can the Minister provide a timeline for when his government will implement this reconciliation strategy?
The Honourable Minister of Indigenous Reconciliation and Northern Relations.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. And as I said, the engagement plan needs to be built on the basis of continuing work with all Manitobans, including Indigenous leadership. And with that, the member opposite should know, if you talk to the member next to him from Thompson, that we have been working on trying to develop this plan. Unfortunately, due to changes in leadership right now, we continue to try and get people to the table to talk about this important engagement.
The Honourable Member for Kuwait-Nook on a final supplementary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Indigenous communities and peoples don't want to hear more excuses. Madam Speaker, we know the former Premier, Brad Pallister, did not take reconciliation seriously. During his time as Premier, he failed to implement a reconciliation strategy despite a legal responsibility to do so. Now, the current Premier has also failed to implement a reconciliation strategy, and it's been now nearly a year since he took over as leader. At this point, it's unclear whether the PCs will ever implement a reconciliation strategy. Can the Minister outline a timeline for when his government plans on implementing a reconciliation strategy for Manitoba?
The Honourable Minister of Indigenous Reconciliation and Northern Relations.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. And our government has been a government of action. We have been reaching out to Indigenous communities, to First Nations leadership. We have been reaching out to the SCO, MKO, Assembly of Manitoba chiefs. And actually, in March of this year, when we reached out to the then acting member for Thompson at this particular time to engage, he advised that it would be premature for us to do that until we have a new Grand Chief in place.
Order. The Honourable Member for Burrows.
Madam Speaker, the PCs have gutted Manitoba agriculture. Hundreds of positions left vacant. Dozens of offices closed. Lending activity to producers declined by 11% last year. Altogether, it means less service and less support for producers. When will the Minister address the cuts his government has made to the Department of Agriculture?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I welcome a question on agriculture. It allows me to get up and talk about all the great things that we've been doing. This government has increased vet seats by 33%. That government has done nothing. Before I get to the rest of the answer, I just want to say thank you to all of our farmers and producers out there, and wish them a good stress-free harvest. Madam Speaker, it's that time of year that they're out there producing food for us, and I just want to say thank you to all the producers.
The time for oral questions has expired. Petitions. The Honourable Member for River Heights.
Madam Speaker, I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. The background to this petition is as follows. Currently, adults with specific or non-specific disabilities or a combination of disabilities, such as ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, auditory or language processing disorders, and/or nonverbal learning disabilities, will be denied access to services under the province of Manitoba's Community Living and Disability Services, CLDS, if their IQ is above 80. People with these or other borderline cognitive functioning issues also have extremely low adaptive skills and are not able to live independently without supports. Recently, it has become widely recognized that access to CLDS should be based not solely on IQ, which is only a measure of a person's ability to answer questions verbally or in writing in relation to mathematics, science, or material which is read. Very often, persons with specific or non-specific disabilities or a combination of these disabilities have specific needs related to their executive function for support when they are adults or are transitioning to adulthood, which are not necessarily connected to their IQ. Executive function is the learned ability to do the normal activities of life, including being organized, being able to plan, and to carry out plans and adapt to changing conditions. Those who have major defects in executive function have a learning disability requiring assistance under CLDS to be able to make a contribution to society and be self-sustaining. Provision of CLDS services to individuals with specific or non-specific disabilities or a combination of these disabilities and have the potential to make an important change in a person's life. Newfoundland and Labrador have now recognized that access to services should be based on the nature of the disability and the person's needs rather than on IQ. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to change the requirements for accessing community living and disability services so that these requirements are based on the needs of individuals with specific or non-specific disabilities, including executive function or a combination of disabilities, rather than solely on the basis of their IQ. Signed by Vona Giller, Jana Viltus, Ken Carter, and many other Manitobans.
In accordance with our Rule 132(6), when petitions are read, they are deemed to be received by the House. The Honourable Member for Elmwood.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. The background of this petition is as follows. Number one, over 25,000 vehicles per day cross the Louise Bridge, which has served as a vital link for vehicular traffic between northeast Winnipeg and the downtown for the last 110 years. Number two, the current structure will undoubtedly be declared unsafe in a few years as it has deteriorated extensively, becoming functionally obsolete, subject to more frequent unplanned repairs, and cannot be widened to accommodate future traffic capacity. Number three, as far back as 2008, the City of Winnipeg has studied where the new replacement bridge should be situated. Number four, after including the bridge replacement in the city's 5-year capital budget forecast in 2009, the new bridge became a short-term construction priority in the city's transportation master plan of 2011. Number five, city capital and budget plans identified replacement of the Louise Bridge on a site just east of the bridge and expropriated homes there on the south side of Nairn Avenue in anticipation of a 2015 start. Number six, in 2014, the new city administration did not make use of available federal infrastructure funds. Number seven, the new Louise Bridge Committee began its campaign to demand a new bridge, and its surveys confirmed residents wanted a new bridge beside the current bridge, with the old bridge kept open for local traffic. Number eight, the NDP provincial government signaled its firm commitment to partner with the city on replacing the Louise Bridge in its 2015 throne speech. Unfortunately, provincial infrastructure initiatives such as the new Louise Bridge came to a halt with the election of the Progressive Conservative government in 2016. Number nine, more recently, the city tethered the Louise Bridge replacement issue to its new transportation master plan and Eastern Corridor project. Its recommendations have now identified the location of the new Louise Bridge to be just to the west of the current bridge, not to the east as originally proposed. Number 10, the city expropriation process has begun. The $6.35 million street upgrade of Nairn Avenue from Watt Street to the 111-year-old bridge is complete. Number 11, the new Premier has a duty to direct the provincial government to provide financial assistance to the city so it can complete this long overdue vital link to Northeast Winnipeg and Transcona. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows. Number 1, to urge the new Premier to financially assist the City of Winnipeg on building this 3-lane bridge in each direction to maintain this vital link between Northeast Winnipeg, Transcona, and the downtown. Number 2, to urge the provincial government to recommend that the City of Winnipeg keep the old bridge fully open to traffic while the new bridge is under construction. Number 3, to urge the provincial government to consider the feasibility of keeping it open for active transportation in the future. This petition is signed by many Manitobans.
The honourable member for the Pas-Camissac.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. The background to this petition is as follows. Number 1, the provincial road number 224 serves Peguis First Nation, Fisher River Cree Nation, and surrounding communities, and the road is in dire need of substantial repairs. Number 2, the road has been in poor condition for years and has numerous potholes, uneven driving surfaces, and extremely narrow shoulders. Number 3, due to recent population growth in the area, there has been increased vehicle and pedestrian use of Provincial Road 224. Number 4, without repair, Provincial Road 224 will continue to pose a hazard to many Manitobans who use it on a regular basis. And number 5, concerned Manitobans are requesting that Provincial Road 224 be assessed and repaired urgently to improve safety for its users. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the Minister of Infrastructure to complete an assessment of Provincial Road 224 and implement the appropriate repairs using public funds as quickly as possible. And this petition has been signed by many fine Manitobans. Thank you.
Present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba. The background of this petition is as follows. Number 1, in the summer of 2019, provincial governments commissioned a report on lead concentration in soil in Winnipeg was completed. Number 2, the report found that 10 neighborhoods had, I quote, concerning, unquote, level of lead concentration in their soil, including Centennial, Daniel McIntyre, Glen Elm, Chalmers, North Point Douglas, River Osborne, Sargent Park, St. Boniface, West End, Western, and Wolseley, Minto. Number 3, in particular, the predicted lead level of our children in North Point Douglas, Western, and Daniel McIntyre were above the level of concern. Number 4, the Western Elementary School field has been forced to close down many times because of the concerns of lead in soil and the provincial government's inaction to improve the situation. Number 5, the lead exposure especially affects children aged 7 years and under, as their nervous system is still developing. Number 6, the effect of a lead exposure are irreversible and include impact on learning, behavior, and intelligence. Number 7, for adults, long-term lead exposure can contribute to high blood pressure, heart disease, kidney problem, and reproductive effects. Number 8, the provincial government currently has no comprehensive plan in place to deal with the lead in soil, nor is there a broad advertising campaign educating residents on how they can reduce their risk of lead exposure. Number 9, the lead. Instead, people in these areas continue to garden and work in the soil, and children continue to play in the dirt, often without any knowledge of the associated risks. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to take action to reduce people's exposure to lead in Winnipeg and to implement the recommendation proposed by the provincial government's independent review, including in creation of an action plan for the Western neighborhood, developing a lead awareness communication and outreach program, requesting a more in-depth study, and creating a tracking program for those tested for blood lead levels so that medical professionals can follow up with them. This has been signed by many Manitobans. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Any further petitions? The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park, the Honourable Member for Notre Dame.
Madam Speaker, I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. To the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, the background of this petition is as follows. Number 1, home care workers in Manitoba provide skilled and compassionate care that helps better the quality of life for thousands of Manitobans. Number 2, robust home care services are proven to reduce the strain on health services and demand for hospital beds. Number 3, home care reduces the demand for long-term care beds as it allows people to continue living in their own space. Number 4, studies show that a third of the 200,000 Canadians living in long-term care homes could stay home with proper home care support. Number 5, investing in home care saves money as daily services cost half the price of a long-term care bed and 1/7 the daily cost of a hospital bed. Number 6, the provincial government's cuts to home care in Manitoba has resulted in chronic staffing issues that caused the WRHA to cancel 27,000 home care appointments in the month of April 2022 alone. Number 7, many clients in Manitoba only receive home care services once a day, whereas countries such as Denmark offer up to 6 visits a day. Number 8, home care workers in Manitoba are paid poor wages, are offered little benefits, lack sick time, and are overworked, resulting in difficulty retaining and attracting workers. Number 9, home care workers have been without a contract since 2017 due to this provincial government's interference in labor negotiations. Number 10, investing in home care is a proactive approach that would save the province millions of dollars as well as allow more Manitobans to age in place. We petitioned the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the Minister of Health and Minister of Seniors and Long-Term Care to immediately increase investment in home care services so that home care workers can be paid a fair wage and clients can receive the level of service they require. This has been signed by Evan Crosney, Eva Murphy, and Cheryl Rodriguez, and many other Manitobans.
Any further petitions? If not, then grievances? Orders of the day, government business. The Honourable Acting Government House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In House business, pursuant to Rule 34.7, I am announcing that the private member's resolution to be considered on the next Tuesday of private member's business will be the one put forward by the Honourable Member for Fort White. The title of the resolution is Calling on the Federal Government to Stand in Unity with the Manitoba Legislature and Support Religious Freedom.
It has been announced that the private member's resolution to be considered on the next Tuesday of private member's business will be one put forward by the Honourable Member for Fort White. The title of the resolution is Calling on the Federal Government to Stand in Unity with the Manitoba Legislature and Support Religious Freedom. The Honourable Acting Government House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would you call Committee of Supply?
It has been announced that the House will consider estimates this afternoon. This House will now resolve into Committee of Supply. Mr. Deputy Speaker, please take the chair.
Minister, are you ready to start?
Did you ask him to unmute?
Could you unmute, please, Minister?
Yes, I am ready to start there, Mr. Chair.
Is the critic ready? Okay, so I'm going to get this thing kicked off. Will the Committee of Supply please come to order? This section of the Committee of Supply will now resume consideration of the estimates for the Department of Advanced Education, Skills and Immigration. At this time, we invite ministerial and opposition staff to enter the chamber. And Minister, I know you're virtual. Would you like to introduce your staff? You're not required or obligated to, but you have that opportunity if you would like to. Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will introduce my staff. Along with me today is my Deputy Minister, Eric Charon, my Assistant Deputy Minister for Finance and Corporate Services, Melissa Ballantyne, and my Assistant Deputy Minister for Immigration, Carmel Chartrand.
Thank you, Minister. As previously agreed, questioning for this department will proceed in a global manner. The floor is now open for questions. The Honourable Member for St. Vital.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For adult education, enrollment has declined from 2003-04 to 2019-20. The decline in enrollment was 26% in adult learning centers. In adult literacy programs, there's a decline from the 2009-10 year to the 2019-20 year by 40%. That's a 40% drop in enrollment in a decade in adult literacy programs. Experts say that this decrease is not due to a lack of demand, but due to a lack of funding and promoting these programs. Investing in adult education and adult literacy has been proven to reduce poverty. Adults with high school diplomas have greater job opportunities than those who are not able to work those types of jobs. Will the minister explain why there has been this decline in enrollment? And will he address why these programs has been underfunded, both due to inflation, underfunded due to demand as well, and not meeting the needs of those people who would be interested in taking adult education or adult literacy programs?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I respond to the critical question, I just want to hope that everyone had a great Thanksgiving long weekend with their loved ones, everyone in the House, colleagues and staff. I just want to also say that when it comes to adult learning and literacy, it is undertaking a comprehensive review of adult education in Manitoba, as 2023 will mark 20 years since the establishment of the Adult Learning Center Act. The department wants to ensure that Manitobans have access to appropriate programming that will allow them to reskill or upskill, to find new jobs, keep the ones they have, or enter into post-secondary education. Adult education ensures Manitobans have the right skills, talent, and knowledge at the right time and supports economic resilience and growth to rebound from the effects of the pandemic. Our government is delivering on the skills, talent, and knowledge strategy, and our commitment to adult learning and literacy in the province. Our over 6,800 learners, adult learners across 64 adult learning centers benefited from our $20.3 million in provincial funding to strengthen adult learning and literacy as we emerge from the pandemic and support economic resilience and growth. So I want to personally thank the teachers and staff as they have began another school year focusing on adult learner success in and out of the classroom.
The honourable member for St. Vital.
The minister mentioned that there's a review of funding and programming for adult education and literacy programs. Can the minister tell us when that review will be complete and when we can expect to see that report?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My department holds quarterly stakeholder meetings with adult learning and literacy leaders to focus on items such as programming, increased partnerships and collaboration, modernizing efforts and student outcomes and success. I have personally had meetings with one particular stakeholder, Dr. Jim Silver. We had a very good discussion with regards to adult learning and literacy. We have a committee led by the Director of Adult Learning and Literacy Branch and comprised of regional representatives from the adult learning centers and adult literacy programs that has been established. The committee focuses on reduction of red tape and administrative burden, increased transparency, engaging with clients and partners, and transformation of the way we work. The committee enabled the department to convert 5 paper processes into online reporting tools. Additional projects are underway.
The member for St. Vital.
Thank the minister for the question. I'd like to ask about Research Manitoba. Research Manitoba does important work. It helps to drive innovation and develop talent right here in Manitoba. Unfortunately, though, we've seen public accounts show that funding to Research Manitoba has declined in the past years, from 17 million down to 15 million, down to 12 million. These cuts have continued even after a change in leadership with the premier. And I think it's important to recognize that Research Manitoba goes to spur our economy in Manitoba. There's a huge competitiveness impact when it comes to funding Research Manitoba and research in general in the province. It goes not only to bring in federal funding dollars for research, it's meant that our opportunity, that there is further opportunity for economic growth, and to support made in Manitoba research, explore and expand the knowledge base right here in our own province by investing in research and innovation. Research Manitoba obviously plays a key role of that. And even more so now than ever, coming out of the pandemic, it's important for us to focus on competitiveness with other provinces and internationally, and spur our economic activity and economic development through research and the investment in research. So my question is for the minister. Can he clearly explain why there has been this trend to cut and decrease the funding to Research Manitoba? What he says about research in general and its needed growth in our province, and if he plans to reverse course and increase funding for Research Manitoba.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if my critic is aware, Research Manitoba actually falls more in alignment with economic development, investment, and trade. However, what I could share with the member is our government is delivering on the skills, talent, and knowledge strategy and our commitment to adult learning and literacy in the province. The strategy sets out the vision and actions needed to achieve success focused on 4 high-level objectives. And I think I've mentioned this to him before at a committee when we had that committee the first time in my role as Minister of Advanced Education, Skills, and Immigration. We anticipate skills needed for the future. We need to focus on emerging trends in industry, innovation, and technological advancements in the workplace. We also need to incorporate improved data and labor market information into planning our post-secondary training and immigration systems. We have to align education and training to labor market needs and help all students succeed now and in the future. We need to cultivate greater partnerships between employers and training and post-secondary systems so that students gain the skills and competencies needed for success. Of course, adult learning and literacy centers included. We have to foster entrepreneurial and innovative skills, building our innovation startup and scale-up ecosystem through greater connections between students, researchers, academics, and industry will enable greater commercialization and positive outcomes for all. We must grow, attract, and retain talent. We both agree on this. Manitoba has labor and skill shortages. We also have people who need good jobs. We can succeed by bringing our systems together. We have an opportunity to draw our strengths, such as our Indigenous population, to promote positive outcomes for our communities and our economy. We also have to be more vocal about the great things Manitoba has to offer to encourage those who have left our province to return home and to attract people to our province, people with talent, Mr. Chair.
The member for St. Vital.
As of July 2021, the government announced $23,000 were available to support internationally educated nurses, and that more than 1,200 nurses had applied for the program to become approved in Manitoba, to work in Manitoba. So I'd like to know how many, specifically around internationally educated nurses, how many people were accepted to the program, and did this funding actually flow to them? And furthermore, in terms of internationally educated professionals, what steps is the minister taking to ensure that internationally educated professionals have greater access to work in Manitoba?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if the member is aware that the portal with respect to international educated nurses actually falls under, again, economic development, investment, and trade. However, what I can tell him is that nurses in Manitoba are a valued member of the healthcare system, as we both know, and this was especially noted during the pandemic. So as we emerge from the pandemic, our government is working towards increasing the nursing supply to 400 seats over the next few years. During 2022-2023, our government has committed just $12 million for 289 nursing seats at 6 post-secondary institutions. The Manitoba government is committed to meeting Manitoba's obligations under the Canadian Free Trade Agreement and the New West Partnership, and has taken action to address the concerns identified by the nurses. We want to ensure qualified healthcare professionals are working as quickly as possible to support our healthcare system and address our labor shortage. On the subject of internationally educated professionals, I'm glad the member brought that up. I've had numerous meetings with our Federal Minister of Immigration, the Honorable Sean Fraser. We talked about, the alignment of foreign credentials with respect to internationally educated professionals who come from different parts of the world. And, Manitoba wants to be a welcome place. Part of our mandate with regards to the Immigration Advisory Council is to address, that transition when it comes to the alignment of credentials from those countries, and ensuring, obviously here in Manitoba, that they can practice in a professional and safe manner. I've had many of those discussions before with internationally educated professionals. It's very frustrating. I think we both know, we've talked to many people, is that you have an internationally educated professional from these countries that come here only to know that they can't practice of what they were trained and educated on. But that's something our government is working on, communicating with regulators, because we want to ensure that we service Manitobans as professional and safe as possible. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The member for St. Vital.
Thanks. I'd just like to find out from the minister, if he has specific things that he can point to that would show action is being taken to ensure that internationally educated professionals are going to have barriers removed, artificial barriers removed in Manitoba, so that they have better access to work in Manitoba, since we know that there is a need for labor in our province. But just to add a second part onto that question, Minister, recently there was an announcement from the federal government about hours worked, allowable hours worked by international students, increased to 40 hours per week for international students. That was a change made by the federal government. It was made on a temporary basis. Just want to know whether the minister supports that change, and whether the minister would support that change being made permanent for international students.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the member asked me a question about action with regards to internationally educated professional. What I could tell him is that our Fair Registrations Practice Office ensures registration practices are fair, clear, and well defined. If he takes a look at our government website, if you're an immigrant and an internationally educated professional wanting to practice your profession in Manitoba, the Fair Registration Practice Offices has links to each regulator's registration information to help get you started. I want to commend the Fair Registrations Office for putting that on there, because it was my plan of action to ensure that our government is informative to newcomers and future Manitobans that come to our province. Because the last thing we want is for internationally educated professionals to have anxiety or stress without knowing what they're expecting when they come to our province. We want to be that welcoming province. We want to be that friendly Manitoba. So I ensured that those links, that information on our government website if he wishes to take a look and maybe pass on to his network because we're all about advertising here. I mean, you said you like ways to promote government programs and services. That all those links to each regulator's registration information is actually on the government website. With regards to the decision that the federal government made with respect to the work hours limit for international students, one thing I can tell you as the provincial minister in charge of immigration, along with my colleagues from other provinces, we want to ensure that we continue to work with our federal minister, collaborating with the other provinces to ensure that we address the labor shortage. And he has addressed it temporarily, and we'll continue to analyze on how this goes. I can tell you initially that I've been in contact with many small business owners when the announcement was made, and even some international students, and they are very happy that that they can work a couple extra hours. The Minister of Immigration, federal one, and myself, we both agree that the priority is for students to study, but if they can get more hours to supplement their income, to help small businesses, to help labor shortage, then it's a win for all parties. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The honourable member for St. Vital.
No more questions.
Are there any further questions? Seeing no further questions, we will now turn to the resolutions, beginning with the second resolution as we have deferred consideration of the first resolution containing the minister's salary. Resolution 44.2, resolve that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $721,757,000 for advanced education, skills and immigration, advanced education for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 44.3, resolve that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $65,159,000 for advanced education, skills and immigration, student access and success for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 44.4, resolve that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $7,060,000 for advanced education, skills and immigration pathways for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 44.5, resolve that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $74 million for advanced education, skills and immigration, loans and guarantees programs for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 44.6, resolve that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $10 million for advanced education, skills and immigration, other reporting entities capital investment for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. The last item to be considered for the estimates of this department is item 44.1A, the minister's salary contained in resolution 44.1. At this point.
Yeah. I would ignore that just so before as
Okay. The floor is open for questions. The honourable member for St. Patel.
I move that the line item 44.1A be amended so that the Minister of Advanced Education, Skills and Immigration salary be reduced to $21,000.
Okay, it's moved by the honourable member for St. Patel, seconded by the member for Transcona, that line item 44.1A be amended so that the Minister of Advanced Education, Skills and Immigration salary be reduced to $21,000. Shall the...
Nope, the motion is in order and it's debatable.
Okay. The motion is in order and it is debatable.
Is there any debate?
Is there any debate?
Is the committee ready for the question?
Is the committee ready for the question? At this point.
Just say, is the pleasure of the committee to adopt?
Is it adopted? Any nay? Nays. The nays have it.
In your opinion?
In my opinion, the nays have it.
On division?
On,
The motion is defeated on division.
the motion is defeated on division.
This brings us to our last resolution.
This completes the estimate.
Nope, this brings us to our last resolution.
Okay, this brings us to our last resolution, Resolution 44.1. Resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $3,234,000 for advanced education, skills, and immigration administration for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed.
Now we do there.
All right. This completes the estimates of the Department of Advanced Education, Skills, and Immigration. The next set of estimates to be considered by this section of the Committee of Supply will be for the Department of Labor, Consumer Protection, and Government Services. Shall we briefly recess to allow the Minister and critics the opportunity to prepare for the commencement of the next department? Okay.
We are now in recess.
We are now in recess. Will the Committee of Supply please come to order? This section of the Committee of Supply will now consider the estimates of the Department of Labor, Consumer Protection and Government Services. Does the Honourable Minister have an opening statement?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is my pleasure to be here today to discuss Budget 2022 as it pertains to the Department of Labor, Consumer Protection and Government Services. The Department's mandate is to provide labor services and consumer protection in addition to functioning as the internal service delivery organization for government. A key strategic priority for the department is the modernization of government services such as procurement, information technology, asset management, and capital management of vertical and underground infrastructure. In addition, through the new labor and consumer protection portfolios, the department has strategic priorities in areas such as employment standards, workplace safety and health, and consumer protection, providing programs and services directly to Manitobans. Through the Central Capital Program areas, the department executes duties and functions related to capital management and delivery. The department's goal is to efficiently expend capital allocations on approved capital projects, consistently apply risk management to capital funding and projects, and improve asset management for all government assets. Digital and Technology Solutions is the central agency with overall responsibility for information technology and business transformation strategy, policy, and service delivery for the Government of Manitoba. Digital and Technology Solutions provides strategic leadership to continuously improve the Manitoba government's information and communications technology environment through planning and implementing solutions to meet future and current ICT needs. The Manitoba Centre for Cybersecurity leads work in securing Manitoba's data and systems, while aligning IT security policies and practices with government's priorities and risk tolerances. The procurement and supply chain sets the strategic direction, policies, and processes for procurement and supply chain related functions across government. The department also represents the province in negotiations and participates in meetings related to digital service delivery and data analytics. The labor portfolio is responsible for the effective delivery of programs and services pertaining to workplace safety and health, employment standards, and public safety. Consumer protection supports and protects the interests of Manitoba consumers, citizens, business people, landlords, and tenants. As part of its mandate, the department will continue its effort to save taxpayers' dollars and working with stakeholders to expand Manitoba's procurement strategy across the public sector. The Central Capital Program areas seek to ensure predictable delivery of government's commitment to annual strategic infrastructure investments and expediting capital planning and project delivery through innovative project delivery approaches, including design-build and P3s. The department is also working with federal and municipal partners to deliver funding for worthy infrastructure projects within the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program and future bi- or trilateral programs. The provision of central coordination, negotiation, and delivery of strategic capital infrastructure and federal provincial infrastructure programs and projects are key strategic priorities of the department. The department provides strategic leadership to continuously improve the Manitoba government's information and communication technology environment through planning and implementing solutions to meet current and future ICT needs. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The honourable member for... Pardon me. I need to back up just a moment there. I do want to ask the critic, though, if he has an opening statement. The honourable member for Flin Flon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and my opening comments will be quite brief. First, glad to see that we actually have a Minister of Labour again. It's been sorely lacking with this government, although they certainly didn't forego the opportunity to take every kick they could at Labour from 2016 on to the present, whether it was the initial Bill 7 that made organizing more difficult, whether it was the Bill 28 that froze workers' wages, and on, the list of egregious things that the government has done, not for Labour, but to Labour, to working people in this province, is quite an extensive list that I won't go through in the interests of perhaps fostering a new way of working with the minister. I won't point out all the past sins before he took over the portfolio. So with those few words, I look forward to having a productive question and answer session with the minister, and hopefully our questions and answers can lead to a better way of the Department of Labour working than what it's been so far. So with those few words, thank you, Mr. Chair.
And we have to change the time here.
We thank the critic from the official opposition for those remarks. Under Manitoba practice, debate on the minister's salary is the last item considered for a department. Accordingly, we shall now defer consideration of line item 8.1, subsection A, contained in Resolution 8.1. At this time, we invite ministerial and opposition staff to enter the chamber, and I would ask the minister and critic to please introduce their staff in attendance. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have with me Deputy Minister Scott Sinclair and John Paul Fredette.
In accordance with Subrule 78, subsection 16, during the consideration of departmental estimates, questioning for each department shall proceed in a global manner, with questions put on the resolutions once the official opposition critic indicates that questioning has concluded. The floor is now open for questions. The honourable member for Flin Flon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, can the Minister of Labour tell this committee whether he has received a mandate letter from the Premier regarding this new ministry, and if so, will he table it?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Chair, so for the new department, we have not received a mandate letter.
The honourable member for Flin Flon.
So that seems to be a bit of a problem. We have a department that hasn't existed since 2016, a minister who's never held a portfolio before. So how does the minister go about doing what's expected of him if there's no mandate to know what is expected of him? Is it changes all the time, or why is this ministry one of the ones that doesn't have a mandate letter?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So under the leadership of the current Premier, it has been made clear to ministers, myself included, that we are to engage with the department and stakeholders and find the best path forward for Manitobans. There is regular consultation, of course, with Cabinet and with various stakeholders. Labour Management Review Committee has been one of the groups that we have asked for advice. And we've met with various labour groups and First Nations and a variety of other stakeholders.
The honourable member for Flin Flon.
So perhaps maybe if you don't have a mandate letter, or if the minister doesn't have a mandate letter, he could expand on a little more of what direction the Premier gave him when he took on this ministry, or did she just pass it on to you and say, figure it out for yourself? There, I would assume, be more communication than that on what the expected goals of government were before you took on the position. So could you tell us how you figure out what you're doing here?
I just remind all members to direct their comments through the chair. The honourable minister has the floor. Honourable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it would be inappropriate for me to comment on conversations with the Premier. We do regularly meet with Cabinet and report to Cabinet about what we are doing in the department and the ministry. And it has been clear from the Premier's statements, I'm sure that the member will follow them, that it is an open and accountable government, that we are consulting and listening to Manitobans, and that is the direction we have taken. Very many consultations with public and private sectors, labour, management, private sector, public sector, and a wide variety of other stakeholders.
The honourable member for Flin Flon.
Does the minister plan on attending Labor Day events as part of his mandate, or events to commemorate the day of mourning for workers who've lost their lives on the job?
The honourable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I was invited to the last Labor Day, which was the first Labor Day we've been able to have since the pandemic began. And I thank the individuals who invited me. I was very saddened in one way to say that I would not be able to attend, as I was attending the wedding of one of our daughters out of province. So they seem to understand that that was an important event for our family, and certainly as I have time and make time, we can anticipate next Labor Day. I don't anticipate that I've got another daughter get her married on that day, or son, but that was the dilemma that I was placed in this year.
The honourable member for Flin Flon.
Thank you, and certainly appreciate the fact that sometimes family duties do take precedence over political duties. Might have a hard time convincing my wife of that, but she may have a different opinion of how I separate those two out. So would the minister, if he is still the minister on next Labor Day, be planning to get that in his calendar now so that he could participate in Labor Day next year?
The honourable minister.
Well, I would certainly know that it is in the calendar when Labor Day is, and we'll determine what needs to happen for my attendance at various events next year. If I am indeed minister, we'll see. I'm sure the member opposite knows that calendars do change and ministers change. So I will make all attempts to attend events on that particular day, should I still be the minister.
The honourable member for Flin Flon.
Thank you. So the second part of my question was pertaining to the day of mourning, April 28th, for workers who've been killed or injured at work. And does the minister plan to participate in those day of mourning things that happen? I know there's quite a event takes place across the street here in the march. Will the minister be taking part in the march and all those events?
The honourable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on the last day of mourning, and I have attended other days of mourning, the Premier was in Brandon, which is where I was elected in Brandon West. And when the Premier is in your constituency, one must consider that one needs to attend that constituency. And we had the legislative assistant, MLA Teitzma, and the deputy minister attended in the day of mourning. The MLA for Radisson attending on my behalf in Winnipeg. So we will anticipate when the next day of mourning is and see what the schedule brings. But it is indeed an important day for us to recognize for those who have been killed in the workplace.
The honourable member for Flin Flon.
Thank you, and I thank the minister for that answer. So you said, or the minister said that he was in Brandon with the Premier. Does Brandon have a day of mourning ceremony? And I'm sure they do. And did the minister and the Premier attend the ceremony in Brandon?
The honourable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. They have had days of mourning recognized in the past. To my knowledge, I was not invited to anything in Brandon nor aware of any events that were going in Brandon. I was aware of the event in Winnipeg, as I said, that the legislative assistant, the MLA, attended, and the deputy minister.
The honourable member for Flin Flon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So while we're talking about the day of mourning and injuries at work and fatalities, there was a workplace death earlier this year. A young fellow by the name of John Lloyd Berrien, killed while working at a beer vendor in the city. Quite tragic. So the question is, what steps is the department taking in response to this workplace death?
The honourable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we do indeed take all workplace deaths and injuries very seriously and continue to investigate. We did investigate the particular circumstance the member opposite mentions, but it would be inappropriate for me to comment on particular cases, especially as this one continues to be under investigation.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
So normally when something like this takes place, the inspector who did the investigation may issue some workplace improvement orders on things that could be done to prevent similar actions. Can the minister tell us if any workplace improvement orders were issued as a result of that fatality?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We would have to take that under advisement and go back to the particular circumstances of that one. We don't have information on every workplace incident, and I want to make sure that we would get all the details right on what we can say about this one.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
Just on this same case, does the minister believe that calling an inquest when a worker dies, particularly in circumstances like this, that the circumstances could have far-reaching implications for other workplaces that are similar, does the minister agree that calling an inquest would be the most beneficial way of ensuring that the issues that may arise in this case are addressed in similar circumstances, in this case in other beer vendors? Would the inquest lead to safer workplaces, which should be the point of inquests?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we will take the advice of the department on this particular issue, and as I said, they are still investigating.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
The minister tell us how many of their inspectors have taken the appropriate training to determine if a situation like this should cause charges under the criminal code to take place, and at the same time, if he could tell us if all RCMP in the province are trained in workplace accident investigation to determine if criminal charges should be laid as a result of what was known as the Westray Bill that changed the criminal code definition so that people could be held responsible for things that weren't done properly in a workplace.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, as I'm sure the member realizes, there is always ongoing training in the civil service and in the department for a variety of of areas that public servants require training on, and we continue to analyze what training should be required and we deal with the individuals in their particular positions about what's required. With respect to the RCMP, I think I'd have to refer the member to the Minister of Justice, as we don't really discuss interactions with other groups of that nature.
The honourable member for Flin Flon.
Does the minister agree that having inquests into workplace fatalities would be beneficial to prevent fatalities or accidents in other workplaces?
The honourable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we certainly take the advice of the department on what they suggest and request, or if there were a prosecution in a particular case, we would see that we would follow the judgment in that case.
The honourable member for Flin Flon.
Thank the minister for that, although it really wasn't the answer I'd hoped for. In my belief that any time a worker gets killed at work, there should be an inquest to determine the cause of that particular fatality, because it does relate to other workplaces and could very well prevent another worker from having a similar fate. So the government required there to be secure entrances at liquor marts in order to combat crime and other offenses, other crimes that were taking place. Is there any consideration being given to secure entrances at things like beer vendors?
The honourable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, since the investigation is ongoing, it's really too early to comment until we see the results of that investigation. And certainly the Crown Agency would probably be involved in any discussions.
The honourable member for Flin Flon.
So while I understand it's 2-year time limit before the government has to make decision whether to lay charges, sometimes I don't think it's in people's best interest to wait that full 2 years before change starts to happen. So if from the investigation they've determined that there are some shortfalls, particularly at beer vendors, would it not seem to be more prudent to start taking action now, or to at least start engaging in the conversation with employers and employees as to what some of those precautions should be to provide those workers with a safe workplace.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Chair, so again, the investigation is ongoing, and we have to wait the results of that investigation before we move any further. It would be inappropriate to prejudge the results of an investigation.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
Will the department be sharing the results of that investigation with the family?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, as I said, the investigation is ongoing. It would be inappropriate to determine what can and cannot be released until that investigation is concluded.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can the Minister tell us how many workplace health and safety inspectors are presently employed in the province of Manitoba, and could he compare that to previous years, say from 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Chair, so given that he's asked for current in 2016, 17, 18, we'd have to take that under advisement and get back to the member.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
I appreciate that you wouldn't have that information necessarily at your fingertips, so I appreciate that you're going to take it under advisement. Can the Minister tell us how many other beer vendors had a visit from a workplace health and safety inspector since the time of that fatality to determine what they have in place for safe work practices?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we typically disclose total investigations and visits, not individual or sector specific, but we can take this under advisement and get back to the member on how many total visits we have had, but not sector specific.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
So nowhere in the department would there be a record of how many inspections were carried out at specific workplaces, particularly as a result of a fatality, to determine if similar situations existed in those workplaces?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this particular incident the member refers to is, as I said, still under investigation, and there may be a criminal prosecution as well. We don't know that, so it is a little more complex than we might see in a normal inspection. And outside of that, we don't disclose individual inspections and sites.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
So workplace health and safety budget was underspent by over $1 million last fiscal year. Can the minister tell us what accounts for this underspending?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as a new department, I trust the member will understand that many staff and responsibilities were moved in from other departments, and we're looking at what is necessary to make sure we have an appropriately staffed department in order to follow all of the activities we need to undertake.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
Well, thank you. Can the minister tell us what the current vacancy rate is within the Department of Labor, and if possible, break it down into more of the specific, workplace health and safety standards in the different departments within, or sub-departments within the department?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we don't report at that level of detail, but we can undertake to get some information to the member about the particular areas he was asking about.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
Just in regards to employment standards, the department underspent its budget last year by $628,000. Can the minister share with the committee to what degree that underspending comes from vacancies, and what other things would account for this apparent cut in spending?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Chair, well, again, starting a new department of this type, moving in staff and responsibilities from other departments, and then some statutory responsibilities moving back perhaps to finance, have meant that there's a lot of things that are changing in terms of the numbers that are reported. So I trust that the member will understand that with a new department, there are staff that came in and responsibilities that we're still determining or have determined where the individual belongs. Some of them did move back, indeed, to finance with some particular responsibilities.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
Does the minister agree that this kind of back and forth movement of people and resources makes it very hard for people to actually know whether the money is being spent appropriately, particularly when we look at things like workplace health and safety, that we know what the spending is on it year over year, and it's like a 13% cut. Is that impacting those services while you're trying to figure out what your department is supposed to be?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So certainly I agree with the member's statement from earlier, and very honored that the Premier chose to create a department with Labour at the beginning of its name, and I think that's critically important to Manitoba, and it is one of the many roles that we take on, but it was a big part of our department and obviously very important.
Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
And I appreciate the minister's statement, but he didn't answer the question. Does the minister believe that underspending in this area will impact and has impacted the ability for the department to carry out its services that should be?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I wanted to ensure the member opposite that we are on target previous years for the number of inspections.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
Thank you very much. And of course, the minister will understand that the department does much more than just inspections. There's training courses and different things that they do on to be proactive in reviewing regulations, one thing like that. So again, we see the cut in spending, and not just in the workplace health and safety, but we see that again, what is it, a 20% cut in the spending in the employment standards. What effect does that have on the department's ability to do the job that they're supposed to be doing? Can the minister assure us that there's been absolutely no reduction in what should be expected and what can be expected from those departments delivering on the programs that they're supposed to deliver on?
The Honourable Minister.
Obviously, the member opposite knows that the last couple of years have been challenging in the whole world environment, and creating a new department in that environment was a challenge as well. We have been working with our staff and other entities to find the best way of delivering programs and services, and one of them is a partnership with the Workers' Compensation Board.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
The Minister talks about a partnership with the Workers' Compensation Board, but this minister is not responsible for the Workers' Compensation Board. Is that correct?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, that's not correct. I am statutorily responsible for the Workers' Compensation Board.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
I appreciate that. Let's talk about September 30th. The ministers had time for consultation and certainly had time to reflect on the Truth and Reconciliation Day, or Orange Shirt Day as it's commonly called. Had the opportunity to pass private member's bill. The member from Kiewitnuk had a member's bill forward. The minister had lots of time to introduce his own piece of legislation that mandated that as a statutory holiday. Can the minister tell us just who exactly he has consulted with in this, and who remains to be consulted with that seems to be slowing the process down?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Chair, well, we have some that have obviously occurred since September 30th this year, but some occurred prior to that, and then some that are yet to occur. So we have consulted with the Manitoba Métis Federation, Southern Chiefs Organization, MKO, Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs of Manitoba, the Treaty Commissioner, Manitoba Inuit Association, Residential School Survivors, and the Labour Management Review Committee consulted widely with labour and business and other stakeholders.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
So then, I guess the question is, who all does the minister believe he has yet to consult with in order to come to a final decision on whether the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation should be recognized as a statutory holiday in the province of Manitoba?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So these are very emotional discussions that we have had with many groups, and often more than one meeting, sometimes pause during the meetings as we all need to collect ourselves, and sometimes have a further meeting. So it's a very sensitive consultation process that we're going through, and we need to make sure that we fully understand all of the circumstances that the various groups bring to our attention, and sometimes we have agreed for them to reflect on the discussion and come back with further discussions. So as I said, it's a very sensitive and emotional process that we have been going through, and we don't wish to bring forward the very painful memories. They have been shared with us and will continue to be, I assume, if we when we continue these meetings, but they have indeed been very emotional, and sometimes need to take a bit of a break to come back at another time to discuss further.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
Certainly appreciate that it certainly is a very emotional issue that does require the right tone to have the discussions to ensure that you're hearing what's being said. Can the minister give us any kind of feedback that he's received on the day so far? Has the tone been positive towards it becoming a statutory holiday, or has there been a lot of pushback against it?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there is no universal agreed upon opinion, other than it has been made very clear, and I have been made it very clear as well, that this is not a holiday. So to call it a holiday is, I feel, and many others, offensive. This is a day of truth and reconciliation, of recognition, of remembrance, and it means many things to many different people, but it is indeed not a holiday.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
I agree with the Minister. It certainly should never be considered to be a holiday like some other statutory days are. Certainly there are other statutory days, like Remembrance Day comes to mind, where it's not necessarily considered a holiday, like the May long weekend is. Most people don't even recognize what the May long weekend was originally intended for anymore, whereas November the 11th, people recognize it's commemorating what took place on that day. But that didn't stop it from becoming a day of recognition, a day that's considered a statutory day, whether it's a statutory holiday or it's a statutory day, right? That this should probably receive no less recognition than that. So can the Minister give us any idea of a timeline, perhaps by next September 30th? Does he see that those consultations would have come to a conclusion? And certainly I don't want to put any kind of mandated timeline on the Minister to try and rush through, because I know this is an emotional journey for many people. Does the Minister have any sense of when those consultations may come to a conclusion?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I guess for reference, the member referenced Remembrance Day, and that exists as a separate day of recognition from other what are called statutory holidays, is called Remembrance Day. And that may or may not be the avenue we go down. I would hesitate to set a date when consultations are done, because consultations in this case with the emotions attached will take as long as consultations will take. Of course, we would hope to be able to introduce some descriptive legislation in, hopefully the spring. But we continue to listen to a variety of groups on this particular day and what it means to them, and it is very different to all. As I said, no real consistency other than it is not to be seen as a holiday. A day of education, a day of recognition, a day of reflection are many terms that we've been listening to and talking about. So I think it's critical that we make sure we reflect that in any legislation. It is, of course, for the past 2 years, a provincial day of recognition for staff, provincial staff, and for schools and child cares. And we have ongoing discussions, of course, with that. Yeah, I'm sure the member opposite knows that when the federal government declared it a day of recognition, that that has implications for some of our labor agreements. And so that is one of the things that, of course, we have to account for. That if as are most of our agreements, labor agreements are impacted by federal decisions, that is one of the roles and understandings that we have to undertake. And that has been done, as I said, for the past 2 years. The provincial civil servants, as it has been a day of recognition, remembrance, and learning, and great encouragement to all organizations to make sure that we treat it that way, that we partake in the various events and educational opportunities. And I know many of the schools, or if not all the schools in Manitoba, spent the entire week leading up to September 30th talking about truth and reconciliation and what it means and what the responsibilities are of Manitobans.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
Thank the Minister for that. So let's talk about something different now. Can the Minister advise this committee how many strikes took place in Manitoba last year and how many have taken place in the province since 2016, year by year?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I'm sure the member opposite will have heard some of my responses previously. That those are issues that are, between the employer and the union, and unless there is a direct request from labor or management or from the labor board, the department is not involved and should not be involved.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Minister is saying that the Department of Labour has no idea how many strikes have taken place in any given year?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, further to my last response and when we are involved and when we're asked to be involved, we do have a record of when we've been asked to be involved, but we would have to get back to the member with that particular number.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
I appreciate that the Minister has taken that under advisement. So can the Minister advise this committee how many companies have advised the department that they plan or have plans to lay off more than 50 workers since 2016, year by year?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since the department has been in existence, since 2016, we would have to take that under advisement and get back to the member.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
Thank you. So does the Minister have any plans on making any kind of public communication about companies that are laying off more than 50 workers this year?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the reason for the notification is for us to ensure that the obligations under the Labour Standards Codes are met.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
So from the two that the Minister alluded to in an earlier answer, have all those obligations been met by both of those?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So one has fully discharged their obligation, and the other is much more recent and still in progress, but we expect that they will meet all the obligations.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
Does the department have any obligations to laid off workers as to assisting them with finding alternate employment or training or anything of that nature that would help those workers and their families?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, again, our responsibility as a department is to make sure that the employers comply with obligations under the Labour Standards Code. If the member wants to ask about training, that would be a question for economic development, investment, and trade.
The honourable member for Flin Flon.
Can the minister advise what role his department plays in mediation and conciliation?
The honourable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my responsibility is depends on a request from the employer, the union, or the Manitoba Labour Board.
The honourable member for Flin Flon.
So has there been any requests to the minister to do anything with mediation and conciliation, recognizing that those services were cut from his department?
The honourable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So since January of 2022, when the department was formed, there have been no requests from an employer, a labour group, or the Manitoba Labour Board.
The honourable member for Flin Flon.
So could the minister explain exactly what his department would have done had there been a request, seeing as those services seem to have been cut from the department?
The honourable minister.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So currently, the options under the Act for the minister are to intervene in a bargaining dispute, such as requiring the Manitoba Labour Board to appoint a conciliator, appoint a mediator, and ordering a vote on the employer's last offer. Of course, these would be dependent on the requests that we get. These options can be helpful in getting the parties to reach an agreement, but they are not arbitration processes, and none of them can force a settlement, except where the membership votes to accept the employer's last offer following an order to hold a vote. The Act also provides for a mandatory arbitration process that can be initiated by either party when a strike or lockout has been ongoing for 60 days or more, but the minister has no involvement in this process.
The honourable member for Flin Flon.
Does the minister agree that having those services of mediation and conciliation available were helpful in preventing strikes?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, as I said, we've had no requests to the department since January 2022, so I can't really comment on something that we have not experienced.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
Let's talk about vital statistics for a moment. This is a program that is under this minister's area, and apparently it was underspent by some 12% last year. What's the explanation for this variance from budget?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I guess the response here, I know the response here is actually the same as previous ones. It was moved from another department into this new department, and then transition has a lot of different iterations and moving some jurisdiction back and forth. But I do want to assure the member that by late October 2021, the backlog that had been in vital statistics had been reduced by 99.9%. And while it's been under this department, we have been focused on improving service delivery. There are always some unique circumstances that come up, but when we know that, but we do know that when the all of the information is available to the branch, that wait times are within the 2-week goal of the vital statistics branch.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
So the minister says that the wait time has been reduced by 99.9%. Is that correct?
The Honourable Minister.
No, the backlog has been reduced by 99.9%. The wait times, the goal is 2 weeks when the information is all contained and correct in the application.
The Honourable Member for Flin Flon.
Does the minister have a sense of how often the information on the application is always correct?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for 90% of the applications, we have the adequate information to process the registration or the death certificate, whichever that particular application is for. So that leaves us with 10% or roughly 8,000 applications that we need further information on. And some of that information can indeed take time to get because we have to contact the individual. Some of the incorrect information may be the phone number or the address. So there's a variety of things that are circumstances.
The hour being 5 p.m., committee rise, call in the Speaker. The hour being 5 p.m., this House is adjourned and stands adjourned until 1:30 p.m. tomorrow.